Hello, my name's John. I'm a custodian of Corrick, and as you know, we are taking her back to her former glory. Got down the boat for the first time for a whole day, first time in a fortnight, which was really pleasant, and I got my sanding jobs back again, which was good. In the margins, had a nice conversation with James about the preparations that have been ongoing over the last couple of weeks, and particularly in the last couple of days in terms of getting the engine in. We talk about that in some depth, and I'll finish this video off with a bit of a pan round the interior now that it's had a couple of coats of varnish, and I'm really pleased with how it's starting to look. So very much as promised in the last episode, and indeed the boat show episode, we've got the engine. The engine was unboxed a couple of weeks ago. James has been working with the guys in order to work out just exactly how it's going to fit in, and the engine's pretty standard. You've fitted a few of these before, haven't you?
Yeah, Beta 20. I think they fit them as a standard option to the new Contessas. We've fitted two or three over the years, plus into our own boats. Our launcher's got one. Very reliable, easy to get parts, easy to service. Yeah, nice engine.
Okay, but obviously where it's fitting is always different. As they say, all Contessas are the same except where they're different.
Yeah, very much. So yeah, we've had a look at it. We've made up some patterns to check the fit into the boat, and obviously make sure you've got access to the serviceable parts of the engine. Most of your serviceable parts are front and starboard side. Along the port side here, your gear linkage and your gear selector at the back here. So starter motor, heat exchanger, nothing you can really service routinely, let's say. Moving on to the front, oil filter, your belts, your water pump, all on the front of the engine, so good access required onto the front. Moving around to the side, you've got your oil dipstick, your dirt pump at the bottom. This is your lift pump, your throttle linkages, and your stop solenoid, and your loom connections. So most of the bits that you'd use to maintain the engine are all on the starboard side. So good access here is a very nice thing to have. With the Contessas, this is straight into a quarter berth, so there's quite a lot of interior joinery and modification needed really to get good access in there. So quite a lot of the Contessas we've worked on in the past, we've actually cut access patches into this side of the engine bay.
So there's two things we want to fit in here. We want to put this control panel here inside the cave, very much about keeping it out of the wind and the waves. Yep. Yep. And then we'll put the control lever for the gear and the throttle just down there, reasonably far aft, so it doesn't get mixed up in the sailing.
Yeah. Again, any kite sheets and jib sheets tend to be at the front of the cockpit, so get it out of the way, out the back.
Yep.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me too. So James, I wonder if you could just point out all the bits and pieces that we need to connect to and think about in the process of doing this bin.
So the first thing to check when we unwrap the engines, before we bought the engine, we checked the width of the feet, so they fit onto the existing bearers. There's not a lot of modification needs to be done there. We have made a pattern up to see the height of the engine regarding the prop shaft. So the engine looks like it will sit in about mid adjustment on its feet, slightly low of mid adjustment, which is about right. There's an R&D flexible coupling which will go between the gearbox and the prop shaft coupling. So that should take a lot of vibration noise out of the setup, so that will make it a bit quieter. The access through the front here, so all of this boxing is all removable, which is pretty standard with most boats. So that gives you your access through to the front of your engine and the starboard corner, and then in this way, in through this starboard side of the quarter berth here, we have started to cut out the side of the bunk, and that is basically to improve your access onto your cockpit drain skin fitting, so you can see one starboard and one port. The port one, we have cut an access hatch in through the cockpit locker, so that will aid your servicing of your skin fitting, and it will also give you some access to the rear of the engine, gearbox selector, like gear selector, gearbox cable, that sort of thing.
So ideally I'll be able to climb into the starboard berth and remove the access hatch. As you can see it there, which gives a fair old bit of access to the engine and all of the main controls, which, as discussed earlier, are over there on the starboard side. So James, I remember you talking about building up a template. Do you want to show us what you've built and how
yes.
nice and simple it is?
Yeah, so all it is a very simple template just to allow us to see where the feet are going to land, the height of the prop shaft for the centre line of the engine, that sort of thing. And this is it. So this is a mock-up of the engine. So as you can see, the feet land quite nicely onto the bearer. The centre line of the gearbox is marked onto this pattern at the back. You can't really see it, but that is sat about an inch high of the centre line of the shaft, and this pattern is measured off of the engine with the feet adjusted all the way up. So this is as high as the engine can go. So we're about an inch above the shaft. So the whole thing needs to be lowered on its mounts, which will put the engine roughly into about the middle, just below the middle of its mounts, which is about right.
Sounds good. Ideally what you can see here is the way that the grain has come up with the first couple of coats of varnish. Really absolutely delighted with the way it's showing just the richness and maturity of the wood itself. A couple more coats to go, but there we're happy. I hope you enjoyed the shots of the engine and the interior. Always a huge amount of work going on, and really delighted with the way it's going. I've purchased a GoPro, and the guys are taking time lapses of some of the work that goes on, and it's enormous fun reviewing that in terms of just looking at the how these things are done. And I'm going to put some of that together in a separate video, which I'll post shortly. Thank you for watching.